I just kind of started small with like wanting to win state, wanting to play for Team USA, wanting to go to UConn. And then just, I could.
On a quiet December evening at 11:47 p.m., Caitlin Clark glanced at her phone and saw a notification that would forever remain etched in her memory. A donation from someone in Australia with a short, simple message attached, yet one powerful enough to bring tears to her eyes, transforming what had begun as a modest $22,000 fundraising goal into a wave of compassion that transcended borders, cultures, and expectations, reminding her that sometimes the smallest sparks ignite the most. Extraordinary flames. After all, what were the chances that a number chosen to honor her jersey could become a bridge connecting hearts across 6 different countries, all united by the desire to help children they would never meet, strangers bound by a shared humanity rather than fame, fortune, or recognition, showing that the true currency of change lies in kindness and empathy. And what was most striking about this campaign was not simply the money raised, but the fact that its origin could be traced back to a singular childhood memory, one that Caitlin had carried in her heart since the age of 9, when she stood in a local grocery store aisle beside her mother, and watched a family, quiet and weary, put back a package of diapers, a bottle of shampoo, and even a loaf of bread, leaving only the barest essentials in their cart, while the children stood silently, accustomed to the quiet sacrifice of scarcity. And young Caitlin, her innocence still untouched by the complexities of adult life, tugged gently at her mother's sleeve and whispered, "Why are they putting things back?" To which Anne replied softly, her voice tinged with both compassion and gravity, "Sometimes families have to make difficult choices about what they can afford, sweetheart. Not everyone has the same opportunities we do." And in that moment, though she could not have articulated it fully, Caitlin absorbed a lesson that shaped her sense of privilege and responsibility, one that planted a seed of empathy destined to blossom into her lifelong commitment to giving back. For what she carried from that day was not only the image of a mother's worried face, but also the silent dignity of children who knew not to protest when something they needed or desired had to be returned. It was, in essence, the emotional foundation for what would later become the Stock Up campaign. A campaign that started small in its ambition yet grew into something much larger, proving that genuine intention often creates ripples that expand far beyond what the initiator could possibly predict. Years later, when Caitlin stood in the conference room of her foundation's headquarters in West Des Moines, facing her staff and the modest number $22,000 written on the whiteboard, she recalled that childhood moment vividly and knew that this campaign was not about numbers, records, or publicity, but about honoring the promise she had once made to herself as a little girl, to do everything in her power to ensure no child would ever have to go without basic necessities. "We're going to start small," she told her team, her tone firm yet humble. $22,000. We'll use social media, word of mouth, and see what happens. The goal isn't to break records. It's to help families who are facing the same choices I saw that day in the grocery store. And though she said it without expectation, what Caitlin did not know was that her personal story was about to resonate across continents, transcending sport, transcending geography, and uniting people from all walks of life in a shared expression of kindness. When the campaign launched on a Tuesday morning with a simple social media post, Caitlin bared her heart to her audience, recounting the story of the family in the cereal aisle and articulating how that memory had shaped her vision for her foundation, explaining that the goal was not simply to provide hygiene products, clothing, and personal care items, but to remind families struggling in silence that their community cared for them, that dignity and hope were as essential as food and shelter. And within hours of posting, the world responded with a generosity that stunned even the most optimistic members of her team. In just 6 hours, $5,000 had been raised. By the end of the day, the total was $12,000. And more than the numbers, it was the flood of heartfelt messages accompanying the donations that began to reveal the true depth of the movement she had unintentionally set in motion. A single mother from Canada wrote, "I remember being that family in the grocery store. Thank you for seeing us and for helping others who are walking that same path." While a donor from Germany admitted, "I don't know much about basketball, but I know about kindness. Your story reminded me of my own childhood. I want to help." And messages like these poured in steadily, each one carrying not only money but also memory, vulnerability, and solidarity. weaving a tapestry of compassion across borders and reminding Caitlin that what connects people is not celebrity, nor shared interest in sport, but shared experiences of hardship, hope, and the universal desire to help others avoid pain. One has known oneself. By the end of the first week, donations had come in from all 50 states and 5 different countries, with numbers climbing well past the original target. And while her small staff at the foundation felt overwhelmed by the logistics, they were even more moved by the sheer humanity of the responses they were reading, realizing that what they were witnessing was not just fundraising but the emergence of a global movement built around empathy. A wave of generosity that proved the most powerful force in the world is not money or fame, but the ripple effect of one person's genuine desire to make a difference. And as Caitlin reflected late at night on the astonishing pace of the campaign, she understood that the success was not hers alone, but belonged to every donor, every storyteller, every parent who saw themselves in the narrative she had shared, and perhaps even to that family in the grocery store 15 years earlier, whose quiet struggle had unknowingly inspired something so vast and healing. It was as though that single act of putting back a loaf of bread had sent an echo through time, returning now in the form of thousands of families being uplifted, nourished, and reminded that they were not forgotten. And so, what began as a modest goal, tethered to the symbolic weight of a jersey number, grew into a movement that restored faith in the power of collective kindness, showing the world that when one person dares to share their story with honesty, it invites others to connect, to heal, and to contribute. And thus Caitlin Clark's Stock Up campaign became far more than a charitable initiative. It became a testament to the enduring truth that the smallest moments of empathy often yield the grandest legacies, proving once again that greatness in sport is fleeting, but greatness in humanity can ripple across generations and continents.
And she did really well against Steph too. It's hard to beat Steph, but she gave him a good battle, so I'm excited to watch tonight.
There's a girl from the Philippines.
The story of Caitlin Clark's Stock Up campaign reached its most stirring chapters not simply in numbers, but in the countless human connections that emerged from what had begun as an almost modest experiment in generosity. For after the first surge of donations came stories that wove together continents, languages, and personal struggles into a single tapestry of kindness, like the teacher from Japan who wrote that she taught English to children whose families often wrestled with the same struggles of scarcity found elsewhere in the world, and explained that Caitlin's campaign had inspired her to start something similar in her community. Or the grandmother in Australia who reminded Caitlin that kindness has no season, explaining how though it was summer in Melbourne while Iowa endured winter, the desire to care for others needed no calendar, no holiday, no justification beyond our shared humanity. Yet perhaps what most profoundly moved Caitlin were not the donations from well-off families or basketball fans abroad, but those given by individuals who had almost nothing to spare, such as the college student who contributed only $5 with a note confessing she would be eating ramen noodles for the rest of the month, but felt compelled to give because she remembered too vividly what it was like to need help and not have it. And in that act lay the purest truth, that generosity carries its greatest weight when it costs us something. The campaign, already surpassing expectations, reached a turning point during the second week when a video of Caitlin visiting a local family went viral. The father had lost his job, and the Stock Up campaign had delivered enough groceries and care items to keep them afloat for a month. And as the 8-year-old daughter clutched a donated bag, she told Caitlin with wide eyes, "Miss Caitlin, my mom cried happy tears when these came. She said angels watching over us." That video, humble and unpolished, traveled across the world, shared millions of times not because of Caitlin's fame, but because of the genuine emotion and tangible impact it portrayed, reminding viewers that behind statistics of poverty lie faces, voices, and children who deserve dignity and care. And in its wake came donations from the Philippines, a nation of basketball devotees who admired Caitlin not only for her skill but for her heart.